Gamers with Board Game Geek. I'm here with Alan from Rio Grande Games, taking a look at Nevada City. Hi, Alan.
How you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. Nice to meet you. Could you tell us a little bit about Nevada City? It looks like there's a lot going on down there.
Sure. Well, it's a big game. It is a city building game. The basic idea of the game is you're settlers in a town in Nevada City, California, and you're building the town. So it is about that idea of constructing buildings, constructing improvements to the town, dealing with things that can happen to the town, hiring workers, and ultimately making it a cool place to live.
Oh, nice.
The it is at its heart a worker placement game, and the worker placement aspect of it changes over time because you keep adding new buildings, new worker placement locations to help you build your town more efficiently.
Gotcha. That's pretty cool.
You want me to keep going? You want to?
Yeah. So how many players can play this one?
So it's set up for 2 to 4 players. The ends of the boards that you see flip over depending on the number of players. Right now, you've got it set up for 2. With 4 players, there are more building sites, and things change a little bit. But generally speaking, that's the idea. It's along Main Street, right down the center. The center of Main Street is a scoring track where you have your little cowboys work their way around the board to keep score. Each of the locations along the side, you can see some cards that are already preset. Those are building sites, and the buildings are on them. And then there are little markers to show who owns the building. And then if you go down to the corners, there are families. So the core part of the worker placement game is you have a little mat that is your homestead mat. It has lots of different pieces of property on it. And next to it, you have 4 starting characters.
Okay.
So unlike most worker placement games, where each person does one action, we go back and forth, in this, each character has a preset number of actions, and you will activate a character and take all of their actions at once.
Oh,
so you'll be able to, you'll do 3 different things instead of 1 on your turn, depending on which character you've activated. Each of the characters also has different skills. So when they go out and do something, they might be more efficient at mining, or they might be more efficient at building. So Annie, who's there, she's more efficient at ranching, and she has some natural skills so that if she goes to construct a building, she has a carpentry skill and a masonry skill that is the equivalent of one of the wood that would be required or one of the bricks. So that's what her card represents.
Gotcha.
You'll also notice, there you go. Each of the families is heavily themed. So this is Annie Oakseed. We have the cartwheels and the wines, and there's the cartwheels. Some of you will recognize Ben Cartwheel from the image on the card. And
nice.
All right, so it is kind of interesting with the zoom, your gunslinging goes clear. So the little symbol at the bottom is a gunslinging action, which comes up in the advanced game in case you have to be in a shootout.
Yeah.
So around the board, the other things that are going on are you have events over to the right. They sort of look like newspaper. Those are things that are going to come up randomly. They're the kinds of things that would happen in the Old West. Many of them are great. Most of them are not. So in this one, they have a boom job market and you can hire new workers really quickly. In other situations, you might have a fire that shuts down part of a building. And of course, these events are designed to affect most of the players. So what would happen is, say, a fire means that everybody needs to help put out the fire in the town. It's still a town building game, but a building might be damaged and slow down. So this one says fire at City Hall. You'll notice that every player has to commit an action to put out the fire. You have a bucket brigade, if you want to think of it that way. And then the City Hall becomes more expensive to use because they're repairing the damage. So that's what the events do. The contracts, which are next to them, are the are the other ways to efficiently get victory points. Putting buildings up is one. We'll get to those in a second. And the contracts are things that improve the buildings. So the new assayer's weights that are right in front of you improve the assayer's building. So the assayer would get some victory points for whoever built it, but the person who built it would get victory points themselves. So the idea of the contracts is to improve those buildings. And then the buildings, yep, there we go. So
Can't see that.
Your purple card disappears. There you go. You will know what type of contract it is. You can only pick up contracts at very limited locations, so that's why they're all color-coded and give you some information. And then next to them, next to the city hall, are buildings. The buildings are what you're going to bring into play. You're going to build your town. The one side of the building has a construction cost. Ta-da, the brick oven. So let's flip it over for me, if you would. Thank you. So the backside, this is where you would bring it into play. You would bring the brick oven into play under construction, and then one or more of your family members would need to go there, and they would need to bring the necessary commodities to build it. So you'd need iron, you'd need wood, you'd need 4 brick, and then when you've completed that, you'll score the victory points that are down in the corner and flip the card over. And then now the town has a new and more efficient way of getting brick. You'll also notice there's a little construction symbol down, a little construction scroll that says that lets you pick up a gray construction contract. So the idea here is that the buildings are going to improve the town. They give you more options, and they're usually more efficient than the buildings that start on the game board.
And is there any benefit? Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I was just going to ask, is there any benefit to me using a building that I built versus one of my opponents using a building I built?
That's very good, because it is effectively a closed economy. So you're going to earn money. If I go to use your building, there's a cost in the little symbol on the card, and I pay the cost to the owner. Now, if I happen to go to a building that I already own, I have no need to pay myself. So if I were the sheriff to start the game, $2, I can take the deputy's badge, which will allow me to be the first player next turn, and claim any contract. Well, if I'm the sheriff, I don't have to pay the $2, or pay myself, if you will. If you want to take that action, you would pay me the $2 and then be able to take that action. And then action is filled up. It is a worker placement game in that sense. So you'll fill up the opportunity to use that.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, it is what it looks like. It's a great big building game. It is complicated in the sense, we have some very nice ranch gates to indicate player color. They don't really serve much of a function beyond that, but they look really cool. We have little fire symbols and a sheriff's badge and things like that. And we do have a deck of workers, so you can hire people to improve your family and increase the amount of actions that you have available.
Nice. Is there any maximum amount of workers you can have, or?
Sure. So if you look at the homestead mat down at the bottom, there are 3 little slots at the bottom of it. And the cards slip into those slots. So you can only have at any given time 3. Now the contracts can also be placed there, so you can reserve them for future construction. So you can only reserve 3 different cards overall. So there is a restriction to that. And of course, at the end of the year, it is possible to marry one of your workers into the family and increase. Whoops. Did we just lose everything? There we go. Sorry. And they no longer fill that slot. When you complete a contract, it no longer fills that slot.
Gotcha. And so each turn, a player is activating just one worker, and then next player activates one of their workers.
That's right. So the turn order is pretty simple. The first player, who is the person with the sheriff's badge, first player reveals an event, the first event, and it happens. It either is something that goes into effect immediately or will last for the rest of the year. And then each player around the board will activate one character and take all of the actions. Some of the characters might only have one action. Some of them might have 3 or 4. They'll take all of the actions of that character, and then the next person goes. Once everyone has gone, then we reveal a new event, and we do it again. Once everyone has used up all of the actions that are available to them, the year is over, and we reset the board and start again.
Okay, and how many years do you play, or like what would trigger the end of the game?
So the end of the game is triggered by either filling up all of the building slots on the board, or it would be, or the 4th year. At the end of the 4th year in a 3 or 4 player game, in a 2-player game, it could go 5 years. So it is a time limit, or filling up this board. The buildings don't have to be constructed. If every one of those sites is full, that would trigger the last year of the game.
Gotcha.
So it stretches out pretty well. And of course, the decisions get more complicated because there are more choices of actions to take as buildings come out on the board.
Nice. There's a question in the chat from Ruckus McEulis. Is there a lot for every building, or are there more buildings than lots? And if so,
there are more.
There required buildings?
Sorry, I didn't hear the end of it. I started talking.
Oh, and then if so, are there required buildings?
So the required buildings are already on the board, okay. And there are more buildings than there are slots. Significantly more buildings, but so the town will be different every time you build it. There are buildings that should go into play because they help the economy. You may all be trying to outsmart each other, and suddenly you find out that you have a really hard time finding a way to produce brick or to produce wood, lumber. But generally speaking, you have a choice of how you construct the buildings, and know that they won't all come into play. They do come out in a specified order, because we found that if we let anybody build any building they want, the first building that got put up was the Opera House, and that just didn't seem very accurate and useful in the game. So there are a series of buildings available the first year, a different series the second year, and a different series the third year. Any buildings that are left over from a previous year stay in the stack. They don't go away. So you can see that's the first year set of buildings. Any of those that don't get constructed stay as choices and can be built later if they need to be.
Very cool.
Hope that answered your question.
I think so. There was also a comment from Iron Spy. Just read the BGG description. This seems ripe for a legacy variant. Any thoughts about legacy?
I haven't even gotten past getting this printed. I actually am interested in playing with the legacy thing, but I don't know how I would do that with this.
Right.
There you go. So actually, if you flip the goal card over, the turn order is there.
Okay.
So this will tell you how the process works. The goal card, the back of the goals are actually end of game goals that are some variability. So at the end of the game, there are some hidden goals. Each of you gets to choose one of them. And those are things that will happen that will score for everybody at the end of the game.
Cool. There also, Rainer from Board and Dice was commenting on the very nice looking long board and the artwork. While everything, there's a lot going on, but it's clear and you can really see everything that's going on. It's a nice nice layout there.
Well, yeah, I mean, we tried to limit it a bit. You know, the main street, the idea of just stretching the town along one street was kind of necessary so you can see it. And if you take one of the buildings under construction, you'll notice that the sidewalk is dark. You can actually tell what's happening with each of the things as well. So you flip one of those over, flip that over, like is that Lincoln? Yep, there we go. Notice that the sidewalk is dark and the building isn't there. So it's you can take it at a quick glance. You can tell what's going on and what's available and what is coming up.
Gotcha. And speaking of what's available, is Nevada City has been released or? How
It
can
is available.
people?
In fact, as far as I understand it, we're almost sold out. There's a good chance it will get reprinted. So yeah, I'm really happy about that. But it is available now.
Awesome. So get it now, people, if you're interested,
Right.
before it's out of print. But that's great that you're reprinting. And I think there was also a question about the end game trigger, but we talked about that. That was either all the
Sure.
buildings being put out, or depending on the
That's right.
player count at the end of a certain amount of years of play.
Right.
Can I ask
Typically,
what
a
goes
game's going to
on?
run about 3 years. So
Can I ask
Nikki,
what
go.
happens on your player board here with the tokens and the little tokens and the bigger
absolutely.
tokens?
Sure. So the homestead mat is your farm, if you will, is your ranch, and yeah, I'm waiting for the close up here. And there we go. So you have an assortment of tiles, and actually this is a good description of the tiles too. So the larger square tiles that are at the bottom are brick, iron, wood. Whoops. Okay, so that's the largest of them. Those are actually farms, ranches, and mines. If you flip one of those over, you'll see that any of the big ones, if you flip it over, so when you purchase it, that's the purchase cost when you purchase one at City Hall, and you'll get 2 victory points for it. And then it comes in, and that's a place where you can produce silver. There is an interesting production market value that changes, that fluctuates, but that is where you sell these. And so the little tiny ones, the silver, the livestock, and the crops, are the things that you would sell to earn money. And then ultimately, the mid-sized squares, which are the brick and the wood and the spirits, the mid-sized squares are the commodities that you would need to put the buildings together, and you'll have to purchase those with the money that you get from selling your sheep or from your cows or your crops or your silver.
Wow.
So your homestead mat just is where you keep all of that together.
Okay. Cool.
And if you can get to the market value and production charts over in the upper right corner. So up in the upper right corner of the board, there's something that says production and market value. So this is where we find out what produces on any given year and what the value of those goods are. And it changes in that if something happens to production, let's say there's a drought and the crops die, the cubes don't go away. They move down to the market value because rarer crops are now more valuable. So at the moment, you have two green crops tokens up in the production area. If you took an action to farm, you would earn 2 crops. You would put 2 crops in that field, in each field that you farmed. And then if you go to sell them, you'll notice there's only 1 cube down in the market value space. So the crops are only going to sell for $1 each. So that's how that works, and that changes every year. It resets. There are some fixed ones. The production track will always have 1 silver and 1 livestock and 1 crops on it at the beginning of the year, but as time goes on, those will change back and forth.
Very cool. I like that mechanic. We have a couple more minutes, Alan. Is there anything else you want to mention, either about Nevada City or anything else coming up with Rio Grande Games?
Sure. One of the I don't know. Now that I've said sure, went through it pretty fast. It is an interesting game to me. It is big. Anyone who is looking for a 60-minute game, this is not the choice. But if you're looking for something that's meaty, gives you a lot of really interesting decisions because you have so many options to go. One of the things that I do like about this game in particular, of the things that I've come up with, is that you have many different paths to victory. You still are earning victory points, but you can concentrate on constructing buildings. You can concentrate on farming, ranching, and mining and controlling the economy. You have a lot of different ways to do things, and the choices only become more complicated as it goes on.
That is awesome. I think a lot of gamers like myself are always looking for games that have multiple paths to victory. And how long does an average game take to play? We're talking 4-player games.
It would normally take about 2 hours. I would say you should be aware, because of the complexity and going through all of the cards and things, that your first shot at is going to be 2.5 hours or more. Once you've got it down, it's pretty straightforward, and most of the decisions are pretty logical. It is an Old West themed game. There is a logical reason for everything in the game. When you marry somebody, the cost of marriage is 2 liquor, because you have to have a party, and 2 resources, because you need a dowry. So once you start to get the hang of the way the flavor fits into the mechanism, it speeds up pretty quickly.
Smooth.
But your first shot's going to be more than 2 hours to play it.
Yeah, and the artwork and everything with the theme, it just sounds great. I'm gonna have to give this one a try sometime.
Cool.
But yeah, thanks, Alan. Thanks for giving us a look at Nevada City. This is from Rio Grande Games and Sound.